Who speaks on behalf of this legislation?
Yeah.
Senator Alma Francis Heiliger, you're recognized.
Thank you. I wanted to share with you in regards to Bill number 34-0108 as read by the clerk. This bill is attempting to change the retirement age of senators. Currently, according to the VI code, it's at 60 under the tiers, and we would like to change it to 65. Now, the reason why I'm saying this is because we have an amendment here to amend this piece of documentation. And the amendment does correct some errors that were listed in the original bill. So at the appropriate time, we will be making an attempt to amend the bill. But what the bill is seeking to do is specifically now under Tier 2 to change the retirement age from 60 to 65. Now, the reason this is being done is initially in Act 6905, the retirement age was set at 50 years old. It initially was changed to 60, and currently, as of right now, the reason why I'm attempting to, according to what the bill says, to standardize the age of retirement across most sections of government. Now, one of the things that we're seeing is people are living longer, and every aspect that I could jump into to try to standardize the retirement age where I can, I have attempted to do so in other pieces of legislation, which will be coming forward. This is just one step to do so. I think when it comes to the retirement system, I have this thought and concept that we have to be fair across the board as much as we can. And I find it, what I can say, I find it that when it comes to us as representatives, we have to lead by example. And by leading by example, for me, is being part of the trenches of all of those people that have to work up to the age of 65, whether they're teachers, janitors, every single person that has to get to that retirement age. I think we as the people that they ask to represent them should be right in the trenches with them. So I am hoping that my colleagues would support this piece of legislation as an effort to amend the code in making sure that the people of this territory know that they have elected officials that are working right alongside them and have to work just as hard, and when it's their retirement age, that they have the same similar time frame. Now, I know some are going to speak as to the different tiers and how some have been able to retire at a certain age. I don't personally have any control over past and who was able to retire at 50, who was able to retire at 60. I only speak to what I can do as a legislator right now. And as of right now, I am trying to amend it to put it to 65, that it's on par with other individuals, especially those under Tier 2, that are working towards their retirement. And we are their employees. And we need to stand side by side with them for all the work that they're putting in, and we should be retiring accordingly at the same time. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Senator Francis Heiliger. Point of information, Senator James, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To avoid any future embarrassment in this hearing, if you look at Title 3, Virgin Islands Code, Chapter 37, Section 714, it speaks to conflicts of interest. But what the sponsor of this measure is trying to achieve is to amend Title 3, Chapter 27, Section 701 through 741. So there's a major typo in the bill, which is substantial. Look at the bill summary and look at the enactment clause of the legislation. So that's my point of information before we even act on this measure. We're seeking to amend two different parts of the code. But the thing is, we know the short title is not enforceable, but the enactment clause is totally incorrect.
We had a point of inquiry from Senator Gittins. Senator Gittins, welcome. I know you are a non-member of the Committee on Government Operations and Consumer Protection, so we welcome you. Kindly proceed with your point of inquiry.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon to all. The first inquiry was already stated by the good senator across the aisle. The other one is whether or not a bill such as this before us today was discussed in the meetings of the subcommittee with regards to GRS.
I can answer that question, and yes, it was discussed.
It was discussed with a desired outcome as to how to proceed.
It was discussed, and it's on today's agenda so that we could make a decision and get testimonies from the Government Employees Retirement System.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Was there another point of information? Okay, you're recognized, Senator Frances Heiliger.
Thank you so much. The point of information speaks to the amendment that is before you. When we got this piece of legislation and it was already performed, we did notice that there was an error. I noted that chapter, when they spoke to chapter 37, that was an error in addition to attempting to get legal sufficiency. The numbers were skewed. We did contact legal counsel where they created an amendment. And if you do read the amendment, it strikes after the word chapter and eliminates all of that and substitutes it with, according to the amendment that we all have that was being circulated, it strikes after the word chapter and it speaks to 28A, section 763, subsection E, is amended by striking 60 and inserting 65. So that is why you have the two pieces in front of you, and it literally would hopefully clean up the mistake that we got out of legal counsel with this documentation.
Point of order. Point of order.
Almost seemed like it was.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, a bill is being introduced at this time. I'm not sure why we're entertaining an amendment that's not before us. The amendment has not been offered yet, and therefore the amendment is not a discussion at this time.
Well, I believe Senator Gittins, she, as it is her will, she was just putting that on record to note that she has an amendment forthcoming. Senator,
stating I'm not completely. Just basically stating that you have an amendment is one thing. However, from the introduction, there was she spoke to the amendment, and I'm saying that before the body right now, what's being introduced is a measure before us, which is the actual bill, and the amendment does not come into play.
Understood. Thank you kindly for your reminder and your point of order. Point of information. Oh, I'm so sorry. Senator Vialet, first for your point of inquiry or information? Information, and then Senator Javon E. James, Senior for your point of inquiry? Information. So we have 2 points of information. You may proceed, Senator Vialet.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to jog your memory a bit. The subcommittee for GRS did have a meeting, and at that particular meeting, we asked members to work with legislation that referenced the Government Employee Retirement System so that we could collectively have a discussion and also be able to speak to Mr. Nibbs and Attorney Smith, along with the consultant. And at that particular meeting, we did have discussion on proposed fixes to the system. And at the end of that meeting, recommendation was made to discuss this particular measure that is before us right now. And that recommendation was made by the chair of this committee. And the chair of this committee was told that they did not want to have any discussion on the bill and that we should not proceed with discussing that particular measure. And I intervened at that point when the chair of this committee said we need to discuss the bill, and I said if the sponsor of the bill does not want it to be discussed, then we can't discuss it. So I just want to put that clarity on the record that we did have opportunity to collectively have a discussion on this particular measure, and it was refused by the sponsor of the bill that said they did not want it to be discussed.
And if I may, just mention, because we were working in collaboratively so that we would be able to make a joint decision relative to any matter that is affecting the GRS system, knowing that it is one of the top priority of this legislative body, so that we could make those decisions and see and discuss credible solutions to the system, and so we can move forward in making sizable and impactful legislation that is going to help our people. Senator Javon James, you are recognized for your point of information.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I am in possession of the amendment, which is amendment number 34-344. But as we seek to amend the enactment clause section of the bill, it is still very important for clarification, even for the purposes of the media, to amend the short title, because here we know we're saying one section, chapter 27, the next one is saying chapter 37. Now we have a next one saying chapter 28A. It needs to be all across the board when it comes to the short title and the enactment clause. So that's just my point of information before we get into the bill, so there are no misunderstandings.
Noted. Senator Francis Heiliger, you're recognized for your point of information.
I want to do some clarification, as my good colleague from St. Croix just made some statements. What was requested of us if we participated in the subcommittee of GRS was to bring bills that would impact on a financial aspect as it relates to the GRS system. I made it perfectly clear that the reason why I never offered the bill is we had conversations with the GRS system, and even in their testimony, they stated that this basically would not have any financial impact on the system whatsoever as it relates to senators and a handful of individuals if they even participate in the system. And I clearly articulated that because at the end of the day, we were discussing bills that could potentially generate millions upon millions of dollars. And if I shared with you at that meeting, the reason why I did not believe this was germane to finding millions and millions of funds was because of that discussion with GRS. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Heiliger. As I mentioned, I am a member of that committee, and a subcommittee rather, and I understood the marching orders from that committee. We have here some testifiers on the piece of legislation. A pleasant good afternoon to you, Mr. Austin Nibbs, as well as Attorney Kathy Smith. Let's just do a quick microphone check. We can see you and visual. We have visual. Microphone check. Mr. Austin Nibbs, pleasant good afternoon.
Good afternoon to the committee.
Pleasant good afternoon to you, Attorney Kathy Smith. Microphone check.
Good afternoon to the committee.
Thank you. Administrator and CEO Austin Nibbs, you may proceed with reading your testimony on the record.
Thank you. Good day, Honorable Carla Joseph, Chair of the Committee on Government Operations and Consumer Protection, committee members, other distinguished senators present in the chambers, and the listening and viewing audience. I am Austin L. Nibbs, Administrator CEO of the Government Employees Retirement System. The GRS appreciates this opportunity to give testimony on Bill number 34-0108, an act amending Title III, Virgin Islands Code, Chapter 27, Section 7, relating to membership of senators in the Government Employees Retirement System to increase the age of retirement. We have received and reviewed the amendment to Bill number 34-0108, which states Bill number 34-0108, Section 1, is amended by striking 60 in both places where it appears and inserting 65 in its place. The amendment still only addresses Title III, Chapter 37, Section 714E of the Virgin Islands Code, which is applicable to Tier 1 members only. There are no Tier 1 legislative members that still serve in the legislature. We recommend that Bill number 34-0108 be amended to address Tier 2 members as follows. Title 3, Virgin Islands Code, Chapter 28A, Section 736, subsection E, is amended in the second sentence of paragraph 2 by striking 60 and inserting 65. We see no advantage to the GRS unless the legislative member continues to be re-elected through the retirement age of 65, which would result in additional contributions to the system, or will not begin to collect benefits until age 65. As required by law, proposed legislation before becoming law requires an actuarial evaluation. Our actuary responds to the proposed legislation as follows. In reviewing the proposed bill to change the retirement age of legislative members from 60 to 65, we estimate that this will have a de minimis impact, if any, on GRS's unfunded liability, the ADEC, the projected contributions, and the projected insolvency because of the population size of this category. Madam Chair, in conclusion, the GRS recommends the passage of Bill number 34-0108 with a recommended amendment. We are available to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Nibbs. Colleagues, we will go to one round of 5 minutes. We will begin by recognizing Senator Milton E. Potter for your 5 minutes. Senator Potter.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, CEO Nibbs, Attorney Smith. Mr. Nibbs, I wanted to ask you, you said that based on the actuarial analysis that the bill would have, I believe you used the word, de minimis impact on the overall massive unfunded liability of the system. In your view, how will this movement from 50 to 65 impact the system overall? If it's going to have a negligible impact on the bottom line of the system, how will it improve? How will it improve the system?
I don't think it would really move the needle any. There are some senators who opt out the system. Also, most senators maybe, hopefully they would serve 3 terms. I would assume all the other provisions in the present code in regards to as far as how many years or when the senators vest. So it's so much different variables that we're looking at, because some senators don't make it to 3 terms. And, so it's very negligible, very negligible. It's very hard to pinpoint exactly how much it would be. When we use that term de minimis, it means that we cannot really determine how much because of so many variables involved here.
Okay. And currently, I know that Senator Francis Heiliger mentioned that the intent was really to bring some standardization to the age of retirement across most sectors of government. And is the age of retirement for most folks who are not class 3, what is that age where, that would be considered full retirement age?
I think that age right now is 65. And that's the reason why 65, regular.
Okay.
65.
Okay.
Yesterday there was we testified at another meeting moving the firefighters to age from 55 to 63. And it's our position, my position. My position is that maybe we should just set a rate, just a universal rate, and say this just like Social Security, you can retire, at certain age, 62, 65, whatever. But I think 65, and we have recommended 65 years ago that we move the retirement age to 65.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. I don't have any further questions regarding the bill. Thank you very much, Madam Chair, for the time. Thank you very much, testifiers, for your responses.
Thank you so much, Senator Potter. Senator Franklin D. Johnson, you are recognized for your 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, for this time. I really don't have much question, but I needed to get some information from Mr. Nibbs. And it's too much not in regard to this piece of legislation, but the next piece of legislation, I asked for some information from GRS, which was in regard to folks that makes more than $65,000. That piece of information never came down to us, at least to me. That was a proposal that you guys had submit. You know what I'm speaking about, Mr. Nibbs?
Yes, I think I know what you're speaking about.
I really would like if you could send that through the chair so that I could have access to that piece of legislation.
Yeah, what we did is I think we still have some conversation with the actuary. We did do a study maybe back in like 2010, 2011, and we tried to update it to see what effect it would have. There are questions of what the cap should be. I mean, if you're making more than 65, should the cap be 85? Should it be similar to what the Social Security cap is?
Yeah.
So we're looking at certain strategies.
Can you give me, and back on line with this piece of legislation, can you kind of give me a breakdown of what the current benefits payment to senators at the status that they're right now, at the 60, the payout pay status in grid?
Yeah, well, it's tier 2. Just about all senators are tier 2, and they usually tier 2 vests after completion of 3 terms, 6 years, and they're eligible for retirement beginning at age 60. And for each year while in office during the first 6 years, they will get 3.5% of compensation. And if you're in office 7 to 12 years, you'll get 4% of compensation. If you're in office from 13 to 20 years, you'll get 4.5% of compensation. And for each year after 20 years in office, you get 5% of compensation.
But this is a big question. If a senator, though, is 3 terms and he's under the age 60,
yes,
what does he receive?
Well, that means that he cannot receive any benefits until he reaches that age.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Johnson. Surprised that you ended so quickly. Nonetheless, the chair does appreciate it. Senator Novell E. Francis Jr., you are recognized for your 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, Administrator Nibbs, and good afternoon to Attorney Kathy Smith.
Good afternoon, sir.
So the subcommittee have been meeting in an effort to come up with some consorted effort as plan sponsors along with the executive branch to slow and maintain the solvency of GRS. And I certainly don't. And we have already taken a position that we don't want to be piecemealing. I think that you have eloquently stated on many occasions that you would prefer to see substantial measures because of the funding that's required to save the GRS system. And I think it's counterproductive for us to continue to move minor, minimal type legislation to address this particular issue. This community and retirees are really banking on the plan sponsor to really slow the insolvency of the GRS. You use the term de minimis, which means it's too trivial or minor to merit consideration, especially in law. Correct? That's the term you used?
Yes, sir.
So tell me, would this change, if it was to be implemented, would it impact current sitting senators?
It would impact, yes, because you're tier 2.
And all of the current sitting senators are tier 2, is that correct?
To the best of our knowledge, yes.
So what we're doing here really is talking about eliminating young, aspiring individuals from actually joining the Senate. Because obviously they'll have to do many, many years. We have 30, 40-year-olds that join the Senate, which means that they'll have to wait a substantial amount of time at least to achieve the age of 65 before they could see retirement. So they can't even begin to even consider making a career out of the Senate. Correct?
Well, if they're successful to be reelected more than 3 terms, or, if they're successful, there's only one senator that really went more than 20, which was former Senator Berry. So, but if they're successful,
Senator Hansen also did more than 20. Senator White did more than 20 years.
That's correct.
Senator Hansen, Senator White made it.
But White was not, he opted out. Well, Senator White was not part of the decision.
Very well. Again, I believe my position is on these measures is that we need to continue to work collectively to make a significant impact into our GRS system and to work towards addressing the insolvency of the system. I believe that we're on track based on the discussion that we've been having and our plans moving forward. We'll be rolling out to the public in short order. And, until then, I will continue to look for the big picture approach to this and not to piecemeal. It is okay to run and say that you're trying to do something. But the reality is that this community, this is my 32 years working for government, this community is expecting that this Senate, and I think the chairman have said it himself, all roads leads to the 34th legislature in addressing this particular issue. Let's stop playing games with the people. Let's focus on us not only hitting a home run, but at least making some double base hit so that we could be able to resolve this issue of insolvency of the GRS system. Thank you very much, Madam Chair, for the time.
Senator Francis Heiliger, you're recognized for your point of information.
Thank you. I would like once again to make it infallibly clear that this piece of legislation was brought forward not for any financial impact. That is the reason why it was not discussed at the GRS meetings as it relates to bringing forward funding when it comes to the subcommittee. For me, I'm going to say this again. We are here as elected officials, employees of the people of this territory, and this piece of legislation to move from 60 to 65 has everything to do with making sure that the very people that employ us understand that we are here in the trenches with them, and everyone that retires at 65. I do not believe that individuals in this institution should have any kind of unfair advantage in regards to what my colleagues were saying, that somehow young people coming in is not going to look at the legislature as a career. It is called public service, okay? It is called public service. Thank you very much.
Point of information.
Thank you so much. Point of information, Senator Kenneth L. Gittins, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Based on the discussion previously and hearing the response from GRS, I don't know of this measure that we're discussing, if it can actually be retroactive back. You have vested employees within the institution, and you can't mess with their contract, what they have already had with the government of the Virgin Islands. So I would like some clarity from the council, from GRS, whether or not it is her understanding that this measure that we're discussing at this time can actually go retroactive going back.
Good afternoon, Senator.
I'm sorry, testifier, would you be so kind to place your name on the record prior to speaking?
Kathy Smith, GRS General Counsel. Good afternoon, Senator. I've seen bills before that have been made retroactive. Whether or not it would stand up in a court of law is something different. So I couldn't opine as to what a court would do and what a determination that the court would make. But certainly the legislature could pass it and say it's retroactive. I just can't tell you if the court would uphold it.
Well, okay, thank you, and I'll accept your response. However, the question wasn't about whether the court would accept it. The question was based on the document that's before us, and there's nothing here stating that this will be retroactive back. So if that is the case, then I just wanted to be clear that the response was incorrect, that it cannot and will not affect current sitting legislators.
Senator Francis Heiliger, you're recognized for
Thank you, first of all, Madam Chair. Y'all has just cut off people
I'm just
like
a little bit fast on the gun. It's late in the day. Thank you so much, Senator Gittins. Senator Francis Heiliger, you're recognized for your point of information.
Thank you so much. The very question that my colleague asked, I did make an effort to inquire with our legal counsel because that was also a concern. And based on what the response was, legal counsel did share that under section 763E, senators vested completing 3 terms. So this will affect senators that have served, not served more than the 3 terms. So if senators that are already here, according to what legal counsel is saying, that have already vested in for those 3 terms, it would be moving from henceforward. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Senator Kirk A. Ville, you're recognized for your point of information.
Thank you so much, and I'm glad that Mr. Nibs is here today and that he was able to clarify that even after serving 3 terms, that you have to wait until 60. Because the common perception out there is that you serve 3 terms and you get your full $85,000, which is not correct. And that's a lot of people believe that. So it's on the record officially that you serve the 3 terms and then the retirement age is 60. However, I want to point out there's been a lot of comparison and universal application, Mr. Naves just discussed. To serve in this body, you have to run every 2 years. You have to be elected. You're not protected by a union. You're protected by the work that you do when you come and report on a daily basis and the measures that you pass. So you cannot make the same comparison that a senator is the same as the sponsor said, same as teachers, same as the custodian, same as this. You're not protected by a union. You're protected by the work that you do. And every 2 years, you got to go back out and you got to run and you got to run. And you always have the possibility of losing, which is fine because that is the will of the people. But at some point, even within ourselves being here as legislators, you got to be humble by the work you do and proud of the work that you do. And you cannot continue to diminish the work that you do. And sometimes it is popular to diminish the work that you do as a senator because you get votes. But you should be sung in that basis that you are humbly elected to serve the people. But the key word is elected. And the key is every 2 years. And Madam Chair, I don't know if you're going to have a back and forth with every single person that have a point of information, but I know that that is also not what takes place. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Senator VLA. But I try to be in managing this arena and this chair to operate with a level of parity and be impartial, as is my sworn oath. Senator Javon E. James, you are recognized for your 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the time. Before I ask any questions, I just want to repeat a Bible scripture which says, "For many are called, but few are chosen." For many are called, but few are chosen. And we have been chosen by the people of the U.S. Virgin Islands to deal with the big issues. And when you have an individual like Mr. Nibs saying de minimis, and you look up the language, it makes you wonder, what are we really doing here today? But I will say this much. The good minority colleague of mine made mention in her introduction that she wants to see it all across the board. But if it's all across the board, we have 3 branches of government. So are you going to bring a legislation that is going to go all across the board? Or was that a vague statement? Because you want to deal with fairness, according to you. And I'm not sure if you want to ruffle that up, but if you're going to talk about all across the board, we have 3 branches of government. And the next thing is, if Mr. Nibs can just tell me, based on Title 33, Virgin Islands Code, Subtitle 3, Chapter 111, Section 3080, that speaks to elected governors and elected lieutenant governors' retirement fund. After 1 term in office, what does a governor collect after 1 term in office, whether he gets reelected or not? Mr. Nibs?
I'm trying to remember. I think it's like, isn't that like 85% or something like that?
After 1 term in office, whether a governor or lieutenant governor does good, they go home with 40% regardless 40%. Of age.
Okay.
1 term in office based on the Virgin Islands Code for the governor or lieutenant governor. So after 1 term in office, whether you get reelected or not, as a governor or lieutenant governor, you go with 40% regardless of age. Is that true, Mr. Nibs?
40%, I think, is 80%, so 125 up to 2 terms, something like that.
2 terms in office is 80%. 1 term in office is 40%.
That's correct.
And it's regardless of age, right?
Yes, sir.
So are we really talking all across the board here today? If you're going to bring legislation that is all across the board. If you really want to talk about impact, because based on what Mr. Nibs said, this is de minimis, little to no significance. But if you want to talk about all across the board, bring legislation all across the board, and I will support it. Because we're talking about fairness. If you're talking about every worker in government has to reach an age of 65, based on the introduction of my colleague, bring legislation all across the board, and I will support it. My question to Mr. Nibs, when it comes to Title 3, Chapter 28A, Section 763, coverage for members of the legislature, it says, for each year while in office during the first 6 years, they receive 3.5% of compensation. Can you break that down to the public? What that means?
You get 3.5% of your salary.
Based on tier 2, because we don't have any tier 1 senators in here right now.
Yes.
Tier 2.
Yes, based on tier 2 provisions, you'll get 3.5% of your salary.
Give us some figures, some numbers.
Your present salary was 85,000, I think. So 3.5% of that is like maybe 2,000 something.
Okay, just want to make sure. And then the governor, lieutenant governor, after serving one term in office, goes home with 40%, right? Regardless of age.
Yes, sir.
All I'm saying, Khalid, I have no problems to put in legislation, but if you're going to do it all across the board, thank you, Madam Chair, for the time.
Thank you so much, Senator James. Senator Francis Heiliger, you are recognized for your point of information.
Thank you. I am in full support of what my colleague said. And when he brings the piece of legislation, I would be more than happy to co-sponsor it. One of the reasons in my effort in trying to do this across the board, I was attempting to put in for all the various, but speaking with my colleague, I was verbally told he already was putting it in or he already did. So that is literally the only reason I, as a senator, did not submit it. So if you have not done it already, based on our prior conversation, I will be more than happy to submit it. Thank you so much, my colleague.
You are recognized, Senator James, for your point of information.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not here to do tit for tat, but I want you to remind the people of the Virgin Islands, you have 3 branches of government. So don't make it seem like I have legislation that speaks to the judicial branch. And that is why certain legislation needs to go to the subcommittee for GRS. So when we bring it in one package. Just make it seem like we're fighting and we shouldn't be fighting here today. We shouldn't be fighting here on the floor today. Let's do it one comprehensive approach. So these matters need to be heard in the subcommittee to avoid these things. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the time.
Senator Gittins, which rule are we looking at that was broken specifically?
The rules.
Chapter 7 of the rules that we are breaking and you're referencing. You may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I want to bring to your attention that we pay attention to Rule 704 and Rule 712 of our code, of our rules, so that we don't keep going back and forth. There's a debate going on, and every time a senator speaks, then the bill sponsor expects to rebut in between. That is not the way that a debate proceeds. Please, let's adhere to Rule 704 of our rules so that we may proceed as smoothly as possible that you stated that you want this hearing to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Gittins. Senator Viale, you are recognized for your 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't even know what I'm debating, because you're debating 60 to 65. For individuals who every 2 years got to run for re-election. In no way is this going to affect me, because I'm a career government employee. 30 years in the Department of Education. So this isn't going to affect me in any way. And this is my 4th term. But I looked at it in context, and I looked at this young senator to my left, the young senator who is 34 years old. And I did the analogy with the senator from Frederickson, and I said that if he's supposed to serve 20 years, of being elected to this body and serving the people of the Virgin Islands. He will be 51. No, you're not in 34 and 20. You don't mean to hear 3 years. That's all my math. And he would have to wait 14 years after serving 10 terms to collect a retirement. So what is going to happen is if after that 20 years of serving that the young millennial senator loses his seat, he better find a job until 65. Because he's not eligible to collect social and he's not eligible to be a retiree of the legislature. And that is why the police commissioner said that you're discouraging young individuals. Because you'll have to think twice. You have to protect yourself. The millennial senator from St. Thomas, is that really fair to them? I mean, in the Virgin Islands, the common perception a lot of times, senators get a lot of negative flack. And it's usually, whatever punitive you could say about senators is usually said. But if we really want to be honest, if we really want to be honest and fair, is it really fair for somebody to serve 20 years in this body and then wait 14 more years? I mean, can anyone fathom the difficult process of being reelected on a regular basis, much less 10 times, and you still don't qualify? We had a meeting to deal with the solvency of the system, and the sponsor brought nothing that adds $1 to saving the system. No measure to add $1 to the system. No input when we're discussing how we are going to get across saving the system. And we had measures there that we discussed that is going to bring additional money. But it is always so easy in this body to bring something that you think is going to excite everybody. So you bring a measure and you say 65, and then you use the argument, oh, well, you know, we need to equalize everything. When in fact, Mr. Nibs clearly said that just about nobody qualifies for it. Literally, barely anyone qualifies for this that we're trying to change. Barely anyone. Today is the greatest day for the legislature because the conversation is unnecessary. But it's a good day because people learn that after 3 terms, you gotta be 60 years old to retire, to collect. And there was a misconception. So you could imagine somebody that put in the years and then they come and they say, well, I'm going to extend it 5 more years. I honestly don't see the basis. And in the testimony, it is clear that this doesn't impact the finances of the government in any way. It doesn't save any money. It literally doesn't do anything. And the bill is poorly written, that you have to amend. A 2-sentence bill need to be amended. 2 sentences. And it had to be amended because everything in it is cited wrong. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Time.
Thank you so much, Senator Ville. Senator Gittins, before I recognize you for your 5 minutes, I know you had raised a question relative to the point of order. I pulled up my rules, and I really wasn't too clear on which section you were placing the order in, because I know each senator has the opportunity to make a point of information and as well as a point of inquiry. So, but I thank you for the lesson learned. The lesson learned. You are recognized, Senator Gittins, for your 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't mean to be rambunctious, but maybe I should ask you where in the rules say that when the proponent of the bill disagrees with every senator that debate on the matter, that they could just point at this, point at that every time, stall in the process. That's why I say let's adhere to the debate in Rule 704 through 705. In any case, this bill appears that is calling for people to become what I usually call career senators. And if we're looking for career senators, we're looking for trouble. Because, and I say career senators because you're going to have to spend some time in here. Those of us who came in a bit younger than others and whatnot, we shouldn't be punished. And in that sense, this seems of a way to be punishing the younger members of the body. As for me, I just turned 50, but I don't intend to stay here till I'm 60. And nobody, or 65, I should say, rather. And I don't need to wait until somebody say, I don't want you no more to make a decision that it is time for me to move on. But again, those of us who don't have that type of age on us, when we retire before the age of 60 or 65, we keep talking about people living longer these days. I realize, do you all look at the obituary and see how people dropping like flies around here? And then the same government system, or families around here have a hard time in getting the monies from GRS or whatever is owed to the families. When I dead and gone, I don't want my daughters to have to be fighting for monies owed to me or owed to them. So while I'm here, allow me to make what I am rightfully owed. I believe it's the Revised Organic Act states that an individual can run for the Senate from about age 21. So if you run at the tender age of 21 and do 3 terms and move on to something else, you're telling me that that person who is not even 30 years old must wait another 35 years to be paid what is rightfully owed to him or her, what him or her have already worked for? Let's be fair in the process at the same time. I'm about finding solutions for our government employees' retirement system. I do believe that we have one of the most lucrative systems in the nation. And I have already reached out to the system to try to introduce legislation that will be able to benefit them and do away with the double dipping investigation that we saw come out in the newspaper the other day. I heard the good millennial senator said across the aisle for us to all work together and come with a comprehensive measure or information to address our GRS issues, and I wholeheartedly concur with that. We do have a subcommittee, and I wish that something such as this would have been discussed there before it came onto the floor. And that was the exact reason why the good legislative president and vice president pushed to have these subcommittees so that we don't have this type of discourse on the Senate floor, but rather work within these subcommittees so that by the time it gets here, it's beneficial to all. And when I say beneficial to all, I mean too beneficial to those who we serve as public servants. Once again, I don't intend to make this my tenure in the legislature a career, and I want to caution those of you who have a vote in today's hearing on this and not make this a career position. We're asking for trouble down the road. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, Senator Gittins. Mr. Clerk, put 5 minutes on my time. I want to, just reiterate my position and the process that I utilize as being a member of the 34th Legislature Subcommittee on GRS. I did, within my responsibility as chairperson, because I am a member of that subcommittee, bring this legislation forward. I reviewed it as it was written and it is being presented here, minus the amendment. And I took a deep dive into our code and saw that it really did not apply to the sitting senators and also to the future senators, because all senators who come in to this body come in at tier 2. And as written, the proposed legislation was only affecting tier 1. Tier 1 senators have already started to collect their annuity payments. Okay, so all of us here are tier 2. And we are looking, that was the first item. Then I looked at the age that was being proposed, and we had talked really offline about it at the subcommittee meeting, and they did bring into our attention that that portion 2 of the legislation as proposed was flawed because of the age issue. We did have a sidebar, and the proponent determined that it was not in my place as chairperson to actually bring this legislation before that subcommittee, but to bring it forward here in this body. My only issues, and I don't have any concerns at retiring at 60, 65, etc. I don't have those issues. I'm very grateful if I live that long. Very grateful and thankful if I live that long, and whether the people see me fit enough to be able to retire. The issue that we have at hand is whether this piece of legislation is going to affect our system in a positive way and to bring a level of parity. I don't see in the greatest scheme of things how that level of parity is going to be achieved. Because one, we don't have a lot of senators who make it to the 3 terms so that they could retire and become vested even. That's the one. The other thing I noted is that we have in the legislature, and this was the biggest eye-opener for me as becoming an elected official, realize that we don't accrue annual leave, we don't accrue sick leave. Like I said, I didn't mind that either. I don't have a problem with it. I am a servant, and I am here to serve our people to the best of my ability. But if this legislation isn't across the board bringing parity to the legislators as well as each branch of government, then how are we going to get to a middle ground to get that level of parity? We need to really look at it closer so that we can get a level of parity across the board. I do have a piece of legislation which I would love to be able to bring forward, which the actuarial studies did have something to say about it too. And they did do some actuarial assessment on it. And I will be looking at that, and I'm sure it will be a bone of contention with my colleagues as well. But the sponsor has a good heart, and I see where she is running with this. It is for that level of parity across the board that we as elected officials are not seen as being at a higher level and going forward with legislations that benefit us. So those are my comments, but I want to conclude by saying that there's a plethora of disparities that exist relative to retirement on all three branches of government, as well as the accrual of time with all three branches. And we in the legislature, we have to really work to gain our seating, where in a government employee, a regular government employee, they are usually permanent for a certain time. Thank you so much, Senator Heiliger. You're recognized to conclude on your position relative to this bill before us.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Thank you once again to the testifiers, to the people of the territory, to my colleagues. One of the things with me, it took me 8 years of running for public office to get elected. So I come in here with the thought process that the people made a decision that we are going to allow you to represent us for only 2 years. So any thought process of anyone thinking that for me as an individual that I have any intentions of having a career, I look at this as a 2-year job, and based on the work I provide, the people will make a decision accordingly. And that's as far as it goes for me. Now, this piece of legislation, as I've listened to some of my colleagues speak about individuals being younger, I'm 48 years old. So I personally, based on what legal counsel has shared with me, I would be affected by this piece of legislation based on what was told to me. Because until I am vested, if I do get reelected for 3 terms, then and only then I could participate in this retirement system. So this is not a situation where I even excluded myself. Now, at the end of the day, I am going to repeat again. When I brought this piece of legislation forward, it had nothing to do with any financial aspect of altering the GRS system. We are fully aware that based on the number of individuals that are participating in the system, we spoke to GRS, they shared with us that some senators don't even opt in to retire. Several of them don't even participate. For me, this had a whole thing to do with creating a parity as it relates to making sure that the very people we serve, we are on par with them. And that is what I and my intentions were about. Now, as it relates to the bill, yes, there were some issues with the bill that was identified by legal counsel. And in speaking to them, they came up with an amendment to clarify and fix the issue with the original bill that we had. For public knowledge, once a bill is performed, even if we see errors or issues with it, we cannot go backwards and undo it. Because if I could have, from the very moment we saw the issues after it was performed, before it even came to the Senate floor, I would have been more than happy to alter them. But the only way to change it once it's performed is via an amendment. So that is why this amendment is here today, and I will be offering it at the appropriate time. You know, when I hear my colleagues speak about young people, we all encourage young people to go out and work. We all encourage them to go and be entrepreneurs, whether they choose to work in business, whether they choose to work for the government. But when it comes to this job, it's called public service for me. I cannot speak to anyone and any plans for retirement has never been an initial thought. But at the end of the day, when I think of the people I represent, I think about that man that doesn't even have an option for a retirement plan. And I represent him as well. I think about those individuals that work 30, 40 plus years and are going home in their 70s because they have to work the extra mile. So when I'm hearing the thought process of us as elected officials stating we have to be mindful that young people get a chance as a career as a public servant, I'm all for you wanting to be a public servant, like all 15 of us are elected to be. But at the end of the day, we should never forget that we were elected to represent people. And at the end of the day, for me, I'm always going to ask myself the question, am I a reflection of the people that I represent? And this is what I am doing here today. It has nothing to do with money. It has nothing to do with trying to have a career. For me, this is trying to fix a wrong, and that is it. So I want to thank my colleagues for sharing their thoughts. I appreciate it. And hopefully today, once this bill is amended, I'm simply asking for their support. Thank you.
And thank you so much, Senator Frances Heiliger. Do we have a motion?
Amendment.
Senator Frances Heiliger, you are recognized for your amendment.
I would like to offer amendment to Bill number 34-0108, offered by Senator Alma Frances Heiliger. To Bill number 34-018, Section 1 is amended by striking all the language after chapter and inserting new language that reads as follows. 28A, Section 763, subsection E, is amended by striking 60 and inserting 65. I so move.
Do I hear a second? The amendment fails due to a lack of a second.
Motion.
Senator Frances Heiliger, you are recognized for your motion.
Thank you. I move that Bill number 34-0108 be forwarded to the Committee on Rules for further consideration. I so move.
It's been properly moved. Do I hear a second? The motion fails due to a lack of a second. I want to take this opportunity to thank the members, the executive, well, the CEO rather, and administrator of the GERS system, as well as legal counsel, for your attendance at today's meeting. I will offer you now an opportunity, Mr. Nibbs, for a 30 seconds wrap up.